Welcome to Street Cred, a new series where we look at how the humble street is so central to our lives and lifestyles. Streets are integral players in our movements, our social and cultural activities, and even our commercial pursuits. They're fascinating thoroughfares, sometimes with a secret life, but often with a lot more credit than we give them. Down the ages, streets have been engineered for transport, for business and personal movement. Their variations and their response to landform, location and human activity in particular are intriguing. In Street Cred, we journey into our streets and lanes, into the carriageways, cul-de-sacs, alleyways and back roads that we know and love. We'll look at how streets are designed, how they're built, how we utilise them and how they draw us together as communities in response to our need for movement, socialising, exercise, play, entertainment and all the things we want to do in a city. We look at what they could become in our ever-changing world. So, come join me on Street Cred. It's an eye-opener into a world that you recognise, but often take for granted. I'm delighted to welcome Orlando Harrison from Urban Fold to Street Cred today to talk about his view on streets and the reason he sees them as an important part of our urban lives.
Thanks, Barry. Lovely to be here on a beautiful sunny day and in a very beautiful Melbourne street.
Orlando, you're a very experienced urban designer with a passion for streets. Why do you think streets are so important for us?
As an architect and urban designer, the street is a core part of the work that we do, and it's a core part of our neighbourhoods and communities. And so it's certainly changed over time, and we're looking to make sure that streets support our communities and our neighbourhoods in all sorts of different social ways.
What would you describe as three key elements to a really good street?
I think the sorts of things we're talking about are a front fence and a front yard. The front yards are the place where we can come out, talk to neighbours, interact with the street and support that sense of community and social life on the street. And I think the front fence gives you a sense that you can come out and it's your house. And so you do have a sense of ownership.
Yeah.
And quite often you'll see where you've got a front fence and people using their front yards, they'll tend to plant trees and you'll get more shade and shelter for people using the footpath. And a bit of a sense of protection. And I think the other thing we know is that when there's people out in the street and in their front yards, there's what we might call eyes on the street or the passive surveillance. So there's a perception and probably a reality that it's a safer street and a safer place.
So Orlando, how do you see the future of streets?
What we've probably done with streets is we've engineered them for traffic and services generally, and we've engineered out a little bit of the social life of the street. And so what you'll see in particularly newer developments, they won't tend to have front fences, the front yards maybe don't get used as well, the street is a place for parking, but you also get less shade and perhaps less greenery and softening of the street. So the councils are obviously in control of the street trees and they take time in new developments, and particularly where there's more density to grow and shade. But encouraging people to grow trees in their own front yards and have a sense of shade and greenery and produce and veggie patches, which we can see dotted around the street we're in today as well.
And it's interesting in this street in that there is the odd taller fence that you can't see into the garden from, but 90 or 95% of these houses have a pretty low fence that's transparent.
We know every now and then there's a sense of magic sitting behind the high front fence.
Absolutely.
That it is also part of the street.
And there's one just down the street from here that we've seen. So let's go and have a look at it.
Absolutely, let's go have a look.
I'm Jackie Falgate and I'm a Villawood Foundation Ambassador. And this is my favourite street in Melbourne. It's actually a few streets. It's the Albert Park Village. And Rory, thank you for having me on Street Cred.
Jackie, you're always welcome, and as an ambassador of our foundation, we're really excited to have you on board, and you've done a magnificent job over the last couple of years, and I'm really glad to be here today in your happy place.
This is definitely my happy place for a number of reasons. I rented just around the corner from this exact street. When I first met my husband, we just had a little dog. Life was easy. We'd come down to the village every night, have a glass of wine, wander around. It's just one of the most beautiful places in Melbourne, I think. So I don't live here anymore. I actually live in Hampton, but I work in Docklands, and I try to come to the village a couple of times a week, not just because I feel like it's a really peaceful place to wander around, but there are some amazing lunch and food options here. I love Moonfish sushi. I usually come here, get some sushi for lunch, and then go into the city. And obviously life's a little bit more stressful in Docklands. I'm sure you, as a very experienced planner, would tell me that Docklands needs a bit of work, but I think Albert Park is just about perfect.
I always thought Docklands is soulless compared to Albert Park.
Exactly. So you say Docklands is soulless. I think most of Australia would agree with you on that. But what makes something like Albert Park actually work?
It's the streets around. You've got Business Place to the north, and to the south there's magnificent streets with very big canopy trees, and they've used a whole lot of traffic measures to slow down traffic with little bits of bluestone coming in out and all those bits of agapanthus and other plants on them. And it just creates a really nice ambience. So once you've got a really great place to live in a beautiful shopping village, then people just want to gravitate to it.
Well, I think because it feels like you're in a country town, but you have all the amenities of the city. And like you said, you've got your greengrocer, you've got your deli, you've got a couple of wine bars and restaurants, you've got a beach at one end, and you've got the city effectively at the other end, and you've got public transport running through the middle. That's ideal, right?
It doesn't happen by magic. You've got to have the streets around. And I think some of these streets down to the south of here with the little bluestone restrictions on cars going through, and a lot of use of bluestone and the great street trees, the big majestic street trees. And people just appreciate what a great place it is, so that village just keeps growing and growing.
It is that European style of living, isn't it? Where perhaps you don't need that massive block of land to still have a really outdoors kind of life.
It's very hard to try and recreate this in a modern project. We do our best to try and get a true community hub and perhaps a more modern version, but until the trees really grow, I think the greenery is really part of it. Is a big part of it. If you don't get the greenery in there, everything's sort of made of metal and glass, and you've really got to try and get that. Once the trees mature, it just gets that ambience.
Do you know what I love, which actually reminds me a little bit of here and the Villawood Foundation? It's community. And we're essentially talking about really different parts of Melbourne, but at the core of it, it's the same. What doesn't work about the city is pretty much, this is the antithesis of that, isn't it, when you look at it? Because you almost feel, I think when you're in the village here, like you're in the country, but you're so close to the CBD.
Oh, it's so relaxed. We've got a tram goes on the queue. There's a tram coming through quite regularly, which is a great thing to be able to come here by tram as well. It's free parking. There's just so many little aspects of this village with all the great restaurants, the great Ricardo's institution. There's just so many great places to eat and just to relax here. It's whether it's indoor or outdoor eating as well.
And it's that indoor-outdoor lifestyle that maybe your block of land in this area isn't going to be as big, but at the same time, you've got this amazing space like Albert Park Lake, for example, around you.
Yeah, well, your first townhouse, you have a very small backyard and you just want to get out and enjoy the surrounds.
So Rory, my little top insider tips for Albert Park: Mizuzus for dinner, and Japanese again, moonfish for lunch, beautiful green room if you want to get a bunch of flowers, and don't forget the Village Wine Bar for a beautiful pasta and a glass of wine after work.
Let's make a booking.
Let's go for a walk.
Okay, let's go.
So Miss, you're an urban designer
Yes.
with lots of experience in building new streets, designing new streets, formulating urban environments. Why do you think streets are so important?
To me, streets are a hugely significant part of the places we live in and the neighbourhoods we live in. They almost become those in-between places. Like you think about a journey and you think about where you're starting and you think about the destination, but so much of our experience of places is moving between those two things.
Yeah.
So not only do we spend a lot of time in the streets, but streets are also a huge part of the urban fabric.
What do you see as the things that make for a good experience in a street?
There's so many different elements of it that come together, and they're almost notes in a song that, depending on how you arrange them, the music will sound differently. So you're almost composing a street to achieve an outcome and a feeling. And those notes, I guess, are, you know, the footpath, the nature strip, the carriageway.
You know, where we're sitting here, the note here is it's a wide footpath, it's fully paved, but 30 metres that way and 20 metres that way, there's a grass nature strip, and that's a different
The
note.
composition, it's
different
changing,
note,
yeah. And so if I'm designing a residential street, the purpose and the composition is a lot different to if I'm designing a street in a little main street.
When you're looking to enhance that experience, what are the sorts of things that you're looking for?
Well, I guess one of the things is what feeling am I trying to create in a street? Like, am I trying to create a feeling of safety? Or maybe I'm trying to create a little bit of chaos and a little bit of vibrancy and
a bit of excitement.
a bit of excitement.
So, Mish, I think this mural here is a really interesting example of how you can create some uniqueness in a community.
I feel like these murals are becoming part of the Brunswick culture and the Brunswick streetscapes. Art doesn't need to be in an art gallery. Like, art can be something fun and surprising in our streetscape.
Yeah, and who wouldn't want a cheetah on their corner?
Oh, I'd love a cheetah on my corner.
What a place. So, Mish, what would be your favourite street?
You know, there's so many different types of streets, but I guess one of my favourite would be probably Royal Parade, which is just down the road. It's like a cross between a street and a park. It's catering for a number of users in there. You can travel down Royal Parade on the tram. There's a shared path and you can ride your bike along there. It caters for a bunch of traffic going down there, but it never feels like it's dominated by cars. But it's also interesting to see how Royal Parade then transitions to Sydney Road, which is
where everything's all mixed together.
It's a really lovely example of two contrasting streets working together, the tranquility of one and then the hustle and bustle and the vibrancy of the other.
Apart from Royal Parade and Sydney Road, what would be your favourite streets?
Well, there is a street near us, that's Duckett Street.
Yeah.
And that's been repurposed recently and it had warehouses along it.
Yeah.
And it's transformed to apartments through there. And they've quietened down the street and right in the middle of the street, they've got a little parklet and people from the apartments go and hang out. It's a really clever use of a very small street.
So, Mish, if you were magically made Premier for a day, what three things would you do to make streets better in Melbourne?
I think it would be, number one, is how can we recreate some of those old grand boulevards?
The Royal Parades and the St Kilda roads.
Yes, that's right. Instead of these arterial roads that really are just
about cars, nothing else.
Yeah. Well, that brings me to probably a second point is looking at the role of even places like Vic Roads. Vic
Roads has got a tough job, is their outlet.
Yes.
Like they're trying to make traffic move around the city.
Yes.
But I sometimes wonder if they've made the car too dominant in that and they've forgotten about pedestrians and cyclists and beauty and aesthetics in a street.
Yes.
And what's the third thing you'd do as Premier?
Trees and canopies and having a look at, you know, how local governments can have more funding for establishing boulevards.
Yeah.
And there is this now drive to increase the canopy cover of streets to 30%. So that would be a huge thing that I'd be advocating for.
Excellent. Well done, Mish. Congratulations on being Premier.
Morning, Brendan. Thanks for joining us on Street Cred. This is a little series we're doing to really try and challenge the way people think about urban development. When people talk about sustainability, I always say, have you met Brendan Condon? Have you heard of Brendan Condon? I regard him as an environmental warrior, I suppose, who's built Australia's best and most environmental community down to Cape Patterson, where I think you've really got most of your accolades.
Cape's just a great example of integrating good design. So we've held the standard and trained our builders and designers. So we're averaging 8-star energy efficiency across the whole state. And then we've laid up efficient all electric fit out, so induction cooktops, heat pump heating and cooling and hot water, split, reverse cycle air conditioning, and then put solar on all the homes. So the houses at the Cape have no gas bill. We've got 30% of the houses now paired with long-range electric cars, so 30% of the homes have got no electricity bill. So when you layer up no petrol bill, no gas bill, tiny electricity bill, in a country area where people drive a lot of kilometres, people are saving 5, 6, 7, 8 grand a year in avoided energy bills and petrol bills by living carbon neutral. And what we've done at the Cape can be copied, particularly the combination of efficient all electric and solar, can be copied right across the whole country, and I think it's really important for communities to embrace.
We're today in the Melbourne CBD, and we've built this Sky Farm here, which is just an incredible structure.
This is an agenda-setting project. A few years ago, I saw that this was just an unused urban car park that was just getting hot during summer. and we thought this is an opportunity to retrofit this space into a thriving urban farm. And a couple of years ago, we built stage 1 of Sky Farm. It's been working beautifully. It's now a biodiversity site. It's an urban cooling site, and we've grown over $100,000 worth of produce and donated that to OzHarvest. Wicking beds are an Australian invention. It was designed to combat water scarcity. So they're bottom watering garden beds. Each square metre here holds about 100 litres of water in the base, and it waters up through the soil profile, and the plants reach down for the water. So the only water loss is evapotranspiration out of the foliage, super water efficient, very low maintenance, and a nice big deep soil profile. We're also absorbing nutrients from local businesses, and we're feeding the farm on the city's urban resource. Cities produce huge amounts of organic resource, food and green waste. A lot of it ends up in landfill, breaking down and creating methane, which accelerates climate change. We should be diverting all of that resource into urban farming to produce food, and then to also create sites where people can get their hands in a healthy soil, light exercise, reduce their food bills, urban cooling, friendly spots for nature. There's just so many social benefits to communities to engage in this sort of stuff.
Now, Brendan, how do we get your urban forest to alleviate some of the stresses of being in a high-rise environment, and also our streets are getting hotter and hotter?
There's going to be big opportunities, Rory, in pop-up canopy. So light retrofit additions of canopy like this one. So we're having a look at how you can retrofit streetscapes where you have landscapes that capture rainwater and create shade, and they can be pop-up and low cost. I think there's a lot of innovation that needs to happen in that area.
All the great innovation, which is great for our society, and particularly same with playgrounds. I'm a big advocate of having risky playgrounds where kids come and use a lot of energy and activity and climb things and climb trees and use rocks and sand, but I think everyone's frozen by the public liability of being sued over some kid's accident, which I think is far less a risk than the kid's health in the future.
Yeah, well, I think we're fundamentally risk averse, and that's the time we need to be taking measured and well-researched risk. The worst thing we can do is just keep doing the same. We've got to change practice. I think there's really exciting technologies coming through now that are within grasp, and we need to just adopt them, implement them and scale them. And my biggest passion now is how do we transition the construction industry onto a sustainable footing. Construction is a hard one to crack, and so is agriculture, and I reckon if we started building our houses and drew feedstocks from our farmers, then you could link both of them and decarbonise both of them. You could give income to farmers to grow our materials for our houses, and you could be printing houses and reducing cost over here. We've got to get there, Rory, I'm convinced. I'm really interested in 3D construction printing using biocements and then drawing and recycled material into that. So I think that's the way to hit affordability, precision printing, better houses, all these things.
I mean, that's why I call you Australia's best environmental warrior, because you've really got that passion, but you're not just talking about big ticket items about just saving the planet, you're actually coming up with tangible solutions how to do it.
I'm trying to really solve some of these big challenges that we've got in a cost-effective way that meets human needs, puts roofs over people's heads, puts food in their bellies, reduces their cost of living, because I think you just want to see people do well.
Thanks for coming along today, and hope that people listen and take heed and come down to Cape Patterson, have a look down there, and you'll be mesmerised.
Thanks, Rory.
Thanks, Brendan. This will drive out to be my favourite street of all time. I always admire streets were done at Taylor's Lakes years ago, with all the T-heads all joined up at the top. So I built my own one here back in the 90s, so it's probably 30 years ago we actually built this road. And the modern day planners and engineers, they want everything in grids. This is still a grid, except it's a non-connected grid. So there was a period of time during the 80s where everyone did what was called the can of worms, where all these little squiggly, curvy roads were built with cord heads and they weren't connected, and planners really don't like those at all because of lack of connectivity. But this particular design has the best of both worlds. You have a series of roads connected by T-heads, and the result is just phenomenal. The street pride, the residents love living here. Kids can kick a foot in the street, play cricket, whatever they like, because there's really not much traffic except for those residents who actually live in the street. And because they live in the street, they're going to drive slow, be more aware of their neighbours. So when did you come into this neighbourhood, Julia?
24 years ago, we bought a property here. We were one of the first in this little nook here, and it was just a perfect environment to bring children up in.
So Julia, I think it's such a spectacular street. What's your favourite thing about it?
Look, honestly, everything. The neighbours, we've just hit it off with our neighbours. Everybody loves their garden. It's just so beautiful, and we're very privileged to live here, I feel. And we still love it. We'll never move until we have to.
revisit a street like this really does get me excited. I've been quoting this street, Bissell Drive, in meetings for the last 2 decades. I keep saying the same thing. We shouldn't be building this and building this and building this. Every time I come back to it, just reminds me why we should keep doing it, because I just think it's the best urban outcome of any street design anywhere in Australia.
So this is one of those tall fences that actually hides a hidden gem behind it, Orlando.
Wow.
And if we have a look at this, wait till you see what's in here.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning, Peter. Thank you for welcoming us to your garden.
You're most welcome. Come on in.
Thank you.
So Peter, we are saying that this garden is very much hidden from the street. You wouldn't necessarily know it's here, and it's an amazing asset. And so we're really interested in, you were saying that this gets used by people from the street or neighbours coming in and use the space. And so tell us about how that came about.
My late wife was a heritage architect and did a lot of research into the development of the inner suburbs, particularly Fitzroy.
Oh yeah, okay.
And the original subdivision in this street was 100-foot frontages. And they had big yards because it's before sewerage, and it was also before everyone had motor cars. So a lot of them had horses.
Right.
And one of the reasons, it was her theory, and probably right,
Yes.
they needed a big block because they had to have a horse on it.
Right,
Yeah,
okay.
And they had to dispose of the horse's waste as well as their own.
Yes,
Yeah.
probably through the back lane.
Yeah, so that's the explanation for the large blocks. I sometimes feel guilty in a way. I'm grateful, but guilty about having such a beautiful garden. I'm very pleased that I'm able to share it with people. And I also think it's good to save these sort of places.
Absolutely.
Oh, yes. This is an amazing oasis you have here. This is just stunning. We're standing under this beautiful oak tree that you tell me is now about 39 years old.
We've had a number of parties here. Over 100 people fit under this oak tree.
Wow,
Believe it or
wow.
not.
And you were telling us your daughter actually got married
Got
here,
married here, yeah.
which would have been the most beautiful setting for a wedding.
Yeah, that's what it was. Yeah.
Fantastic.
So I led her down the garden path.
Our streets are many things. They can be fun, utilitarian, beautiful, but controversial too. The thing is, streets are much more important in our lives than many of us think. We shouldn't take them and everything they do for us for granted. Join us on our next episode of Street Cred, where we explore more remarkable streets and the people who help put some real spark into them.
One of the biggest problems we face right now is a little bit of knowledge is dangerous, and we are being controlled by people with little bits of knowledge. Trees that are grown up here in the Dandenong Ranges won't perform out in the west. I've had that argument, I reckon, 30 times over the years, and it is just dribble.
My favourite street's 96 kilometres long and it's called the Kokoda Track. Kokoda Track is physically hard, mentally hard and emotionally challenging. It's such an incredible opportunity to be able to witness something so magical. You can actually see those lives being changed daily.
Until then, get outside and take another look at what's unfolding in your street. Remember, a little street cred can help you go a long way.